You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Okay, I've got to make an apology to one Jessie Stevens before we start the show today.
Yeah.
It's about Onion Gate. I inadvertently shamed you.
You did shame me.
I judged you.
What happened?
If you weren't listening, which Mia probably wasn't,
I
even
don't
though she
think I
was in
was.
the room. On last Friday's show, and Best and Worst, Jessie said that she tried to make a bolognese because she's trying to cook. She's got a baby who needs to eat food and she's trying to cook, and Jessie is not a natural cook. This is what you said on the show.
It took me 2 hours to chop an onion. I did say that. It was only a slight exaggeration. It took me a whole day to make the full bolognese.
Yeah, and I expressed what I hoped was not judgment but incredulity, that you have got to your age without learning to chop an onion. I was like, what
I
have
think the
you...
word is disgust is what you expressed.
Leah, when was the last time you made a bolognese? Interesting.
Tumbleweeds. The thing is, because I was saying, what have you been eating all these years, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the out loud.
I'm a vegetarian, I just remembered.
You just remembered. She's like, when did I last? I didn't. I don't. I won't. I can't.
Finished. Fin. Bolognese fin.
Anyway, the Out Louders had a lot of feelings. And if you're not in the Out Louders Facebook group, you might not know this, but in there now there are many contraptions that chop onions for you very quickly.
From Kmart for $12, I got DMs. But the big hack was a Thermomix.
And everyone's saying, Jessie, you need to get a Thermomix, which costs
That'll only cost
thousands of
$2,000.
dollars.
So you needed someone to come to your house and give you a lesson.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
well, maybe if I say it on the podcast,
Say it,
they'll send me a
Thermomix
free
3 times.
Thermomix.
I don't think it works that way. I think you literally have to go to class. It's like
You have to be
you go
chosen.
to classes.
So as if Kmart doesn't do a Thermomix.
No.
No, but like a version of a thing that blends things.
Sure, Out Louders
and then
will tell us.
I realised that I was shaming you with my like, what do you mean you can't chop an onion? But actually, when I make a bolognese, I don't chop the bloody onions either. I put it all in the food processor, carrot, zucchini, because I still have one of those kids, even though he's 11, that you have to hide all of it. So I'm sorry. And there are Out Louders in there who are like telling each other off for picking on you about your cooking. I'm sorry.
There are
Jessie
others who are
Stevens.
horrified. But this is what I was saying. There is no way that Out Louders, they are busy people, that they're sitting around chopping 100 onions. They're not.
No.
They have better things to do.
Look, can't help but say it doesn't have to take 2 hours to chop it. But no, we're not saying that.
People sent me diagrams.
It can take no time at all if you don't do it.
Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Friday, the 3rd of May. My name is Holly Wainwright.
My name is Mia Freedman.
And I am Jessie Stevens.
And Out Louders, last night, some of you joined us at our very first live show. We were in Brisbane for Mamamia Out Loud Live, presented by Nivea Cellular. And if you missed it, here is a tiny bit of what happened.
In case you missed it, today we learned that Andy Lee, one half of the podcast duo, Hamish and Andy, proposed to his girlfriend of 10 years, Beck Harding. Andy posted a photo to Instagram with the caption, "People keep saying we've rushed into this, but we don't care what people say." There was a lot of fuss from a lot of blue ticks in the comments section. Lee Sales commented, Turia Pitt commented, Hamish, of course. But one blue tick you might have noticed was missing. And I scrolled, I thought, where is she? That's Holly Wainwright. Holly,
Look.
your partner of 300 years has never proposed, and it's a sore point for you. Are you feeling judgy about
Look,
this?
I sent Beck a little message this morning privately
Yeah.
because that's what classy people do. And I said, Beck, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Melbourne, you are up next. Time's running out. We're now counting in days. And
It's the
less than
highlight
a
of
week.
our careers to go and stand in front of you. We honestly have so much fun. And to see all
Speak
the
for
Out
yourself.
Louders. What's the highlight of your career?
Don't you like it?
I've had a longer career than you. I do like it though, a lot. Come on, Out Louders. You know I'm joking. I love you all with all of my heart. And it's the closest I'll ever get to being Taylor Swift on the Eras tour. So come make my dreams come true. Head to outloudlive.com.au to see us in Melbourne next Thursday and Sydney the Thursday after.
I've only just threaded that needle of why Mia likes Taylor so much. It's hard relate. She did singing for HSC.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
could be up there. Costume changes, dancers. I've obviously
Frustrated Taylor.
figured that out.
Oh, and if you can't
Okay.
come to the live show, make sure you tune into our socials because on the Mamamia Out Loud socials, we'll be sharing a lot of behind-the-scenes content as well as in our newsletter.
It's just like when famous musicians do like a tour
Diary,
like a documentary that they
How do you
release,
say
but
it, Jessie?
ours is in real time. I say tour,
Yeah, tour.
but you
Tour.
have to say
Tour.
tour.
On today's show, Anne Hathaway does not want to say anything. So why is she doing interviews? The very contradictory world of interviewing celebrities. Also, weekend recommendations, including a very frank chat about weight, an unputdownable book and a packing hack, and a very sexist medicine shortage, a toilet, a phone, and some tuna. Our best and worst of the week. But first, Jessie Stevens. I
Mia
think
Freedman, actually, if you'd care to read your script.
Shit.
In case you missed it,
But first, Mia Freedman.
in case you missed it, there is a reason that olive oil is so damn expensive right now. Has anyone noticed
Oh
this?
man, I stood in front of olive oil at the supermarket yesterday and I was just literally trying to do the maths.
So Luca came home from his parents' house the other day, which is Mia and her husband, and came home just with olive oil in his hand.
That's where it bloody
Yes. And I said to him, where did this come from? And he said, I refuse to buy olive oil anymore because it is now $14, $15.
Oh, more, like 17, 24,
so
like
much.
so on.
He's horrified. Well, yeah, he probably wanted a tiny little one.
Well, do you want to know why? And I'm going to tell you. Drought conditions and extreme weather in Europe has impacted olive crops over the last few years, causing supply to dry up. And this has resulted in Spain, for example, extra virgin olive oil has gone up by 71% in the past year. And there has also been an increase in olive oil theft in supermarkets, which we don't endorse,
We don't endorse
despite
that.
Cosy Lives being a factor.
I saw an Outlouder just post in the Outlouders, I'm going back to vegetable oil with no context, like capitals.
Yes, I know.
Survive.
I think that's fair enough. Do you remember when bananas were really expensive? It was after some bad weather and
Yeah.
the floods.
Cyclone,
And I remember you'd see someone eating a banana in the street and you'd go, they must be really rich.
Must
It
be.
was like a full status symbol.
Yeah.
And you would never leave bananas in your car because it might get broken into. Good news is on the horizon. International prices may come down at the end of the year, but that's still quite a long way away because Spain's come out of a drought. Now, do you want to know some alternatives?
Sure. I heard vegetable oil.
Vegetable oil, pretty
Seems
much
like
any
an unlikely
oil.
topic for you two who don't use
Do you know
olive
what?
oil for anything. Do
Pretty
you?
much. I
I
do.
use it in my bolognese.
I put it on my...
I don't know if I did. Does bolognese need olive oil?
Yes,
don't
you
know.
fry the chopped
Looking at the wrong
onion in
person.
it.
Yeah, I did.
I put it on my frozen peas and corn,
Okay.
olive oil and some salt. Anyway, you can pretty much use any other oil except for like face oil. So canola oil, coconut oil, sunflower oil, vegetable oil. They're all much cheaper.
can't.
Doesn't
They don't
taste the
taste as
same.
nice, but you can use it.
What
which
would
is
happen
much
if you
harder to
used-
substitute something for a banana.
What would happen if you use your face oil?
Your face oil,
Yeah. Still oil.
well, it'd probably have
Oh, no,
perfume
you
or
don't
something
wanna
in
do
it.
That. It's
Yeah,
it's
right.
perfumed. It's different.
Your insides
It's
would be well
hilarious
moisturised.
that among the three of us, I am the domestic goddess because I'm very far from being a domestic goddess. But even I know that you use different oils for different things.
Stop it, guys. We want to get food sponsors. We have to pretend that we can cook.
All week, I have been waiting to speak to you both about Anne Hathaway on a brand new podcast by the New York Times called The Interview. She sits down with David Marchese in what is like a 45-minute interview.
That feels like 150 years.
Well, if you were hoping for some headlines from it, I've got none. Anne Hathaway is a 41-year-old actress. She's promoting her brand new film, which by all accounts is brilliant. It's called The Idea of You. And I listened to a woman being interviewed, trying not to be interviewed, and it was profoundly
It
uncomfortable.
was.
Here is a taste.
You described yourself as a person who wants to achieve things.
Yeah.
What are the things that you want to achieve? Like, what are the ambitions now?
I don't feel comfortable getting too specific. I think it just comes from being raised in a superstitious household. I think that, again, I don't know. Honestly, I don't really want to say because I just feel like they feel great to me. And I worry if I shared them and they got shredded. I don't want to feel bad about them. I actually feel really great about them.
It was so excruciating to listen to because all I got was a message from you, Jessie, to Holly and I saying, you've got to listen. I really want to talk about it. And so I listened and I kept waiting for the thing. And it wasn't until towards the end that I realized, oh, the whole reason you want me to listen is that it's excruciating and nothing is said.
Nothing is said. And for context, Hathaway has been subject to such intense scrutiny over her 20-plus year career. such intense scrutiny that there's actually a word for it, and it's called Hathaway. In the wake of her 2013 Oscars win for Les Mis, which she was outstanding in, the internet turned on her in a way that, in retrospect, was totally bamboozling.
Yes.
She didn't actually do anything. She delivered the acceptance speech and she said, it came true, alluding to her dreams and stuff and how much she wanted this. And she was widely panned as annoyingly earnest. She has said since that she missed out on roles due to her toxic online identity, where people trolled her for being sweet and allegedly inauthentic.
Did we talk about that was about her striving?
Yeah.
Because I
Eagerness.
sort of compare her to Delta Goodrem in that regard.
And there's a touch of Taylor Swift too.
Of being incredibly talented and ambitious and
Wearing
not
that.
snarky or cynical or sarcastic. It's a certain disdain that is reserved for women who try.
It just is amazing to me. We talked about who gets cancelled a little bit on Wednesday when we're talking about comedians. And women get cancelled all the time for the crime of being irritating. That seems to be it. She irritated some people and that was that. Her career was wiped out for 10 years.
And if you want her to show you her scars from that time, that's a hard no from Hathaway. She's not giving you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm desperate to talk about this interview, which we're going to start with, I also want to talk about the evolution of the celebrity interview more broadly, because there is a dance that has emerged where the interviewer needs an entertaining interview. That's their goal. The interviewee needs a media appearance that cannot be weaponized against them. So they almost would prefer the appearance be totally banal. The publicity is likely part of their contract and they would probably willingly tell you that they don't want to be there. But first, Holly, you're our celebrity expert. What did you make of the interview?
I just felt that Hathaway is so scarred by that experience of basically being completely written off and everybody feeling it was open day on let's all slag off everything that we don't like about Anne Hathaway for so long. And she obviously is an earnest, thoughtful, serious person. When it comes to actors, you get those who are really good at joshing along with an interviewer, giving them just enough so that they've got something to write about, but kind of also keeping some things private, being entertaining. But not every actor is that kind of personality. Some people are very serious. Some people take their craft very seriously. She's obviously one of those, right? And she is so afraid of anything she says being taken and twisted that she just doesn't say anything. And for 45 minutes, that's almost impossible. And you just feel like saying, I wish you didn't have to do this. I wish you didn't have to do it at all. But
do they have to?
Yes,
so this
she would have to
Yes.
for this. She's not famous enough to not, right?
No one's famous enough to not.
Well, some people are definitely famous enough to not.
Well, Taylor Swift, for
Who?
example, has a new album out and she hasn't had to do
Beyonce
an
is
interview.
No,
famous
no.
enough to not.
Guys,
Taylor
that's 'cause
Swift is
they-
famous enough to not.
That's because they work for themselves. When you are paid by a studio to make a film, part of what you are paid your $20 million, $10 million for is to publicize that film. And there are a whole bunch of stipulations, and that's part of the negotiation of your contract, what you will do, what you won't do, what interviews you will do. And also actors want their film to be successful because that then also is about the other work that they'll get the opportunity to do in the future.
And very often they're producers on these projects too, so
Yeah.
they're literally invested. Yeah, sure, not every celebrity of a certain level has to do long-form interviews, subject
No.
themselves to all of that. They can just go, I'll do some round tables, I might do one high-profile podcast. It's becoming more and more rare, those in-depth, a journalist hangs out with you for 4 days from Vanity Fair, all those kind of things, is becoming less and less appealing because all anybody wants is a salacious headline that can then spin the news cycle for a few days, right? If this person said this outrageous thing or said this thing about someone that they've worked with once or rolled their eyes when they were asked this question and we caught it on camera. It's just like a long gotcha. So you're doing this narrow dance for a long time of like, how do I be interesting and entertaining but not upset anyone ever? And it's really, really hard to do.
They always say that the worst content is made when you are performing for someone who's not in the room. And who's not in the room in celebrity interviews these days is the internet. It's social media, it's the Daily Mail, it's gossip sites who will take one thing that you said and spin it. And as you say, spin up the news cycle, right? And nobody wants to be that. it used to be that if you would give an interview to Vanity Fair, and Vanity Fair famously in the 90s and early 2000s, you could not be on the cover of Vanity Fair unless you brought them something. You had to bring them some part of your life that you'd never talked about before that was going to be newsworthy, whether it was your miscarriage, whether it was, Jennifer Aniston after her breakup with Brad Pitt. You had to give them some kind of emotional exclusive. Now, of course, social media disrupted all of that because celebrities got back a lot of power in that they didn't rely on media to be the go-between. And now they are saying no to a lot of things, as you rightly pointed out, Hol. So now you'll often get, for example, Sophia Bush last week came out that she was in a relationship with a former American soccer player, female soccer player, and it was her first public queer relationship. And she wrote an essay about it for a magazine. Other times you'll have celebrities just interviewing their friends. So Kate Moss famously doesn't sit down to do interviews, never has, but occasionally to go with a cover story on a magazine, she will be interviewed by one of her fashion friends. They're not very illuminating, and a lot of people have talked about the lost art of profile writing. Now, podcasting has replaced the magazine because everybody wants to get these people on their podcasts and their long-form podcasts. Now, these are so dangerous if you are the celebrity because it's not being in a round table situation on a junket where you've got maybe 8 journalists who are around a table, or you've got journalists coming in and out, and we saw what that looked like in Notting Hill where they get 3 minutes each, and it's very kind of paint by numbers. I can't imagine how exhausting that would be. But now the Daily, the New York Times, is very influential. Everybody wants to be part of the New York Times brand. So they've said, obviously, we want to do this interview. It's a long-form interview. It's 45 minutes, however long it is. It is a masterclass in talking for 45 minutes without saying anything. And I thought what was interesting is the way that it was edited or not edited, and I'm sure it was edited. They left in so many of the tricks that interviewers do to try and get more out of their subject.
Like what's an example?
Like him telling stories about himself.
Yes, to make her feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So I just left the festival, and within about 10 minutes, I realized I'm lost in the desert.
I'm so stressed and worried for you now.
No cars are coming by. I don't know where I am. My mind is totally foggy. That somehow I'm going to die on the highway trying to walk back to my hotel. And then, after some period of time, a car pulls up, and it's my coworkers come to save me, and
they rescued you.
I get in the car, and I was like, oh, thank God. I've been here forever. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then he looks at the clock and then looks behind him. Literally 22 minutes had passed. I was an eighth of a mile away from I was not at risk of dying, but yeah.
But it felt to you, those 22 minutes.
Longest 22 minutes of my life.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so happy everything went okay.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, no, it's Coachella is very dehydrating.
Now, I have to do that sometimes in No Filter because it is a weird situation, right? And Anne Hathaway calls it out. And later in the interview, they have this weird thing where a few days later, this is obviously the way this new podcast is going to work. A few days later, I call and we talk about the interview. It's all very
meta.
Up your own bum.
But I thought it was quite enlightening because then she could go, oh, I actually said this thing in the interview and I don't agree with that. And he said, I reflected on this, and I thought that there was something she said in that second part where she said you learn a lot more about a person from how they talk about things, not how they talk about themselves. Yeah. And I really...
She also said it's quite rude, the interview process.
It's incredibly rude.
Also, when you think about it, this is why most of the big celebrity podcasts these days are hosted by celebrities, right?
Yes.
So if you're Anne Hathaway and you go on Smartless, say, or Dax or one of those, that you're in safer hands these days because those people know the game. They know the boundaries. They know that, they probably can work out a way to make it sound vaguely interesting when you're talking about your craft.
And they'll probably acquiesce to your demands, which is don't ask me about this. 100%. I don't want to talk about
Whereas
that.
You can feel this almost power dynamic these days. The New York Times, as you said, Mia, is very high status, but this power dynamic of you're just some little reporter sent here and you're going to ask me about my relationship. I mean, and when you think about it like that,
it's unnatural.
It's crazy,
you know, and
rude.
Anne Hathaway, you could ask her, you could dig into her relationship history, you could ask her, why would she answer those questions?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She doesn't need to.
And I'm not criticizing Anne Hathaway at all because I agree with her. I thought it was interesting that she called out how completely unnatural and surreal it is because she's trying to promote a movie. He asked her a question at one point and she said, it's in the movie. Like, you know, and Beyonce says the same thing, you know, I don't give interviews. It's in the lyrics of my songs.
The tricky part for movie stars and actors, though, is it's different from, say, musicians and comedians, because if you kick up a bit of a scandal or you come across as a bit of an asshole and you're a comedian or a musician, it's kind of part of your mystique and your myth, right? Like you're allowed to be edgy, you're allowed to be a bit of a bad boy. But the thing about actors and movie stars is their likability is really, really important. The reason that Anne Hathaway, after all the Hatha hate, went from being America's sweetheart in every like cuddle up on the couch movie to not being able to get a job is because people suddenly didn't want to see her as the bumbling love interest, or, you know, because they were like, well, we've heard that she's a bit painful. And there is no sort of asshole allowance, particularly for female actors, that we might give, you know, a Doja Cat or like Jimmy Carr.
What you were saying on how celebrities will only sit down with other celebrities, really good point. But I actually think there's a growing apprehension about that too, because it isn't the interviewer that is often responsible for the gotcha.
No.
The interview itself can seem, I've done this, I've listened to the interview with Dax and blah, right? And it's quite innocuous, it's quite interesting. I learned some things, I go away. It is then the way that it's spun by some third-party outlet that they can't control, that then has a frame on it that no one intended, and the grab is taken out of context because no one's actually listened to the interview, which is, I think, what Anne Hathaway is kind of worried about. But I also thought there were some funny things in this interview that I've noticed about interviewing is when you have no information about someone because they don't do interviews. So he has very little to go on with Anne. He can't go, how are the kids, or blah, because she doesn't talk about them. The thing I always hear people go, and you'll see this on television all the time, is like, 41, talk to me, because that's the only information they have is the day they were born. So it's like,
that's so true.
If I was having a conversation with someone and someone said, you're 33, how do you answer a question about your age?
He kept opening doors and she kept closing them. And that's what you do as an interviewer, right? You open a door and you hope someone will walk through it. And what he wanted her to talk about clearly was aging in Hollywood and how she no longer plays the ingenue and what's it like and contemporaries and younger people and getting roles. And she just dead batted it and just was like politely closed the door and just went, it doesn't really mean anything to me because
I'm not reflective. I was like, a celebrity can't say they're not reflective.
I don't think it doesn't occur to me to think about my age. And it's like you can't go anywhere after that.
Or she would leave the door a crack open and then he would try and take a step in and then she'd shut it on his face. So she would say something like, I was a very stressed out young woman. And he's like,
what were you stressed about?
And she's like, no.
I want to know, right, because you've interviewed loads of celebrities and you also are a bit of a celebrity. And I know that you don't like giving interviews. I remember in the time that we've worked together, you did a Good Weekend profile once and a journalist followed you around, came to our editorial meetings that day. Again. I remember all that, looking around Mamamia, talking to a few of us. Like that's
looking for the gotcha.
A proper, well, maybe and maybe not, but a proper celebrity profile, that's usually what they do. If you're in a Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, a Good Weekend, they spend a day with you, they talk to people who know you. You know, it's an in-depth thing. And you hate that. So A, why do you hate that? And B, with your experience, how do you interview celebrities?
Well, I hate it because you have no control and because they have to find something. They have to find an angle. And usually they've got their angle before they even walk in the door.
Or they wouldn't waste their time.
Yeah. To me, there's only downside in that. Secondly, I've got enough avenues to express myself, to put my position forward. I don't need to grow our audience at Mamamia, or I don't need to grow my business. I don't mean to sound arrogant in that way, but it's like it's risk reward and it's just not worth it because, you know, the longer you talk to someone, the more chance there is of them saying something unguarded or
the more comfortable you are with them.
Yeah. And also when you're trying to make someone like you. And now when I talk to some of our newer journalists, particularly who are doing podcasts, and I talk to them about interviewing and I say, your job is not to make your interview subject like you. You want them to feel comfortable with you, but it's not about being their friend. So the way a conversation works is different. When you meet someone that you don't know, you're trying to find common ground and you'll just agree with them, or there are ways of making someone like you.
You'll over-relate, which if you're doing an interview, it's like, I don't care about you, I care about the subject.
Exactly.
Often.
And I've learned the hard way. You've got to insert yourself the right amount so that it doesn't feel, they don't freak out at how much they're exposing of themselves. This is why I hate interviewing celebrities, because understandably, they've got their guard up because they are seeing everything through the lens of a clickbait headline that's going to be done by the Daily Mail. And people do trawl our podcast. They trawl No Filter, and they try and pick things out and make them sensational. So, for example, on Monday, I've got an interview on No Filter that I've been trying to get for 2 years, and I've been trying to convince her to do it. Her name's Rowan Mangan. She's in a throuple. She's an Australian woman. She's in a throuple with 2 American women, one of whom is Martha Beck, who's quite well known as a self-help expert. And I've been following their story for a while, and it's so fascinating. And when I reached out to her initially, she was very understandably reticent and said, oh, look, I'd love to talk to you, but I'm really wary of coming across like a sex weirdo. Because that's exactly the sensationalist. And that's not that we will put her across in that way, or, you know, we're very protective of everybody we interview, but you can't control how it'll be picked up by the media. Anyway, I won her trust, and the interview's out on Monday, and you got to take that responsibility really seriously. And sometimes it's hard because they'll say something and you know that it's going to blow up.
And you can write the headline in your head.
You can write the headline in your head. And so even though we haven't written the headline, celebrities are terrible to interview now.
In defense of the journalist too, though, because I've had this experience where it's someone famous or whatever, and, you know, you might have 5 minutes or something with them.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's so hard. And if they're rude or they're abrasive, sometimes I think this is part of your job. You're getting paid very, very well for it. And if you want to be clear about what you do and don't want to talk about, that's totally fine. I actually respect that, and I don't mind being told before. I actually think that's better than being put on the spot, because I've overstepped before and it's happened in an interview, and I'm like, I wish I'd been told that before. But I think prepare and just know what you are and aren't willing to say. Otherwise, just don't send them out.
But what happens if you love being an actor or you love being a singer, but you don't love going and telling the world about your private life?
And you're just not charming, right? Because not every, if I
you
always
don't want
think,
to play that game.
You always think about, and it's a bit of a dated reference, but like George Clooney used to be the gold standard of because he would never give you any real information, but he's always charming, always friendly. Matt Damon's the same, right? Always charming, always friendly, always will just tell you a little bit of an anecdote that they've decided, and so the journalist doesn't feel like a grub for being there talking to him, but also walks away with nothing really except a nice time. But not everybody's naturally charming. Being a good actor doesn't necessarily make you a charming person, right? So you can see the people who find it really difficult and the people who actually really enjoy it.
Mamamia out loud!
It's the weekend and you need things to listen to, things to do, things to watch, etc. Ironic, since we've just been talking about Mia on No Filter, I hate to give Mia another compliment. I know.
There weren't many compliments in that last egg.
That's
Go
true.
ahead.
We love Mia, but I don't really like giving her compliments.
It's not how
that's
love
not our
language.
dynamic. It's not the way we roll around here.
Just before Holly does that, I think you're shit. Go, Holly.
You. Situation normal then.
I loved your No Filter this week with Johan Hari. I loved it.
So just on the note of interviews, he is the gold plus standard of interviewing. He's like a self-sourcing pudding of interviews. I literally could have gone and gone, hi, Johan. It's the second time I've interviewed him. And just sat there for 2 hours and then turned the microphone off. He does everything.
He was the pro. If you don't know who Johan Hari is, these days he's kind of writes self-helpy books, right? But in a very, very journalistic, rigorous, entertaining way.
He wrote Stolen Focus, which was one of my favourite books of last year, I think.
Huge book.
About how the internet is gamified to steal our attention.
And you will have heard him on many podcasts because he is so good at it and read many interviews with him. But his new book is different. It's about Ozempic, right? The weight loss injections. And he has done his usual very, very rigorous research around the phenomena that is this new wave of weight loss medication that seems to really work for a lot of people.
Ozempic is one, and there's others
There are
as
others.
well. Yeah.
We should forward it to Barbara Streisand.
We
I think she's interested
be
in
like,
this.
I think you want to know more about this, Babs. Listen to Wednesday's episode if you don't know what we're talking about. But Johan also was taking the drug himself and still is. And he, in this interview with you, Mia, there are 2 reasons I loved it. One was his honesty about talking about his relationship with food and weight. And what's interesting but also slightly depressing about it is when women do that, we often get called irresponsible and dangerous. You know, if you talk about, you know, whether you've overeaten or whether your eating habits are unhealthy or whatever, a lot of people would be like, stop talking about it. But somehow we forgive it in a man. But anyway, so he talks about that and how he believes he's had a sort of addiction to junk food since he was a child, and he talks about some of the reasons for it. And then the other thing I loved about it, he unpacks all the things that roll on from this new obsession with weight loss injections, which is a topic I know you're really interested in too, Mia, which is the possible medical implications, the possible social implications, the possible implications from the body positivity movement, all of these things. And where you land is not this neat bow. You know how lots of people now, when you're just like, what does he think about it? And you'd be like, oh, he's for it, or he's against it, or I'm for it, or I'm against it. It's not that. It's a very grey area where it lands. And he basically, well, you should listen to the show, everybody, but he basically says that for him, it's changed his life for the better, no question, as well as stirring up a lot of stuff he wasn't expecting.
I know so much more than I knew at the start about the benefits and the risks and the cultural effects of these drugs and how they're going to transform the lives of people all around us in good and bad ways. I feel as divided and doubtful now as I did that first day on that dance floor, watching those Hollywood people shake their skinny behinds. Like, it's weird. I've not had this experience before. Usually the more I learn, the more I kind of come to a conclusion. And this is really complicated.
I just thought it was great. Anyone who's thinking about it, we're not necessarily thinking about it for them. I mean, just thinking about that, it didn't make
cultural impact.
It didn't make me think any differently about it.
One of the
from
things
a personal perspective.
he told me is 47% of Americans are thinking about or are already on a weight loss injection like Ozempic. 47%.
Yeah, and I just think that the cultural, social, medical, emotional impact of that is
going to change our lives as much as
unpacking.
smartphones, the experts are saying.
He does say that. And he's gone and interviewed people all over the world about it. And it's anyway, I just thought it was a brilliant episode. I wanted it to go on and
He
on
has
and
his
on.
finger on the pulse, that man.
He does. He's very good. What are you recommending this week, Mia?
I'm recommending packing cubes, compression packing cubes, in fact.
Can you explain?
Well, we've been travelling around. We're in Brisbane this week. We're in Melbourne next week. And about 6 or 9 months ago, when I was watching some packing videos that Lee's car-law was doing when she was trying to go overseas with her family for a long time with a small suitcase, I learned about these compression packing cubes. Now, someone says it's like we're buying little suitcases to go inside our suitcases, which is probably true. But what they are is that they're little things.
Are they like those plastic
Like
things
little
that you
vinyl-
put your winter clothes and then you put the vacuum in, you go...
No, they're not compression in that way. They
Okay.
just have 2 zips, basically. So you put your stuff in these little different shaped cubes.
Is
and
it
then
just for organisational purposes?
Well, it's also for space purposes. So I've got some that don't compress that are just for organisational purposes, which are great because I'm a mess in my suitcase. I just throw everything in. So it does help to have things compartmentalised. So you go, your undies in one or your tops in one and shoes and stuff. But these ones, you just get them on Amazon and they're cheap. It's like, $30 for a pack of 6 of different sizes. And it's got a second zip that makes the whole thing
Squishes it.
So you've got more room in your suitcase.
Oh, this
I
is
like
very
that.
helpful.
Yeah,
Because
So
I
I
always
really
look at them
like
and
it.
I think that just looks to me like it would take up more room in my suitcase.
No, it actually saves room. And the fact that you can either roll things up and put them in there or fold them. I always forget to roll.
I always
But-
roll.
Yeah, it also just helps. And then at the other end, of course, you can just, instead of unpacking, you just can open them and just put them on shelves or even leave them in your suitcase but still have things a bit organised. They're a little bit like dividers in your cutlery drawer. I love them. Just Google compression packing cubes.
I have a book recommendation for this week called What Happened to Nina by Dervla McTiernan. Dervla McTiernan is an Australian author who we are obsessed with. You've read her, right?
She's one of your favourites.
she's
isn't
very-
she?
I
She's
thought
great.
she was Irish.
She wrote The Rune.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Rune.
she's
The
like-
Rune.
I think
I'd
she's
forgotten about
Australian
the
with a
Rune.
touch of Irish.
Yeah,
The
I think she
Rune.
lives in WA or something. I don't know. I'm absolutely obsessed with her. She has written this book, What Happened to Nina. And I thought it was nonfiction, but then I picked it up in the airport and I was like, oh no, this is a pacey fiction.
I know her
read.
name. Yeah. Is it like a thriller?
It opens. It's actually from Nina's point of view and you know that something has happened to her and then she goes back and, well, actually she goes from the point where Nina went missing and she follows it. It's not a traditional whodunit. It's more about the impact of her going missing on her parents and the parents of her boyfriend who's under suspicion. It is so relevant given what's being discussed in Australia in the last week or two when it comes to discussions around domestic violence and coercive control, the way that these little signs can be missed, but also the impact of loss on a parent. That's, I think, what we always think about is that it becomes a news story and we see a headline and then we move on. But I'm often wondering, how does that mother or that father get out of bed the next day? What are they doing? And this actually looks at, it's really kind of emotive, but fascinating look into what they do to work out what happened. And it's really, really good. What Happened to Nina by Dervla McTiernan.
Every Tuesday and Thursday, we drop new segments of Mamamia Out Loud just for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get your daily dose of Out Loud, and a big thank you to everyone who is already subscribed. It's time for best and worst moments of the week. And we're going to start with Holly's worst.
So I'm not the only one who is in a rage this week about a particular medical shortage. I had to go to 5 different pharmacies in my area this week to get the patches that I am on for hormones.
Did you find them in the end?
I found them in the end yesterday. They were the last packet in that chemist. And I am seeing everywhere, all over Facebook and the internet in general. Obviously, I'm not going to name what medication I'm on, but HRT, right? Like, a peri and menopausal hormone replacement patches.
Mine's out of stock and I'm having to use a different one that's much bigger, and it's like having a bloody ground sheet stuck to me.
Well,
why
so
are they...
there's a global shortage, right?
Yeah.
There's a global shortage. So it's not just me. Out Louders have been writing in the group about it. It's everywhere. So there's a global shortage which is blamed on a couple of things. One of them is that they just can't manufacture them fast enough anymore because the demand is up, more awareness of it, people want them more. And also some of them that are very widely distributed in Australia have actually been discontinued. So we're literally running down the stock. And so I went into my usual chemist to get my patches recently, and she basically just sort of laughed at me. And I said, when do you think? And she's like, I don't know, August, September. I'm like, but I use them like you change them twice a week. You stick them on, change them twice a week. There's 8 in a packet, so it doesn't last you very long, right?
What happens if you suddenly, let's say you couldn't use them for months? What kind of impact? Is it sudden?
It would be different depending on you and why you went on them, right? Now, for me, I'm not going to pretend that like my life would be ruined, but a lot of the issues that I was struggling with before I started on the patches, which I only really did towards the end of last year, the sleeplessness, the anxiety, this and that, they've definitely helped. It wasn't like, as I've said to me, it's not like I slapped them on and everything was great. But what I've noticed over the period I've been using them, that a lot of those symptoms have subsided. Life seems more manageable. But there are women for whom they literally say that this makes their life and their mental health manageable every day, and now they just can't get it. Now, as Mia said, you can go back to your doctor and say, prescribe me something else. And they're saying a lot of doctors will now prescribe a few different so that you can kind of swap and change. But
and there's a gel that you can use.
So you can swap out patches for gels or tablets. But the thing is I can't get into my doctor. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like when I couldn't get my patches this weekend, I didn't have a time that I could get into my doctor, but also my doctor is a 2-week wait. It's like it's not that
And
easy.
you live regionally, so it's not like you're spoilt for choice in terms of a chemist.
So my worst of the week was running around trying to find my hormonal patches, along with many other grumpy women in Australia.
As if we haven't suffered enough.
As if we haven't suffered enough. Sort it out, people. My best, though, is also a little bit midlife related, and that's that on Friday night I went to a 50th birthday party. Now, I go to a few 50th birthday parties these days because it's my age
your
bracket.
era.
It's my era. The thing that was the best about the one on Friday night, we've talked a bit about the absolute joy of dancing like nobody's watching, like at Disco Club, that Lisa and Sarah do from Brisbane, now all over the place, doing those dance workouts that I like to do, or we can do on Move because they're so, it's just that joy. The thing that filled me with so much joy on Friday night was watching all the old men in my life. And when I say old men, I'm being facetious, the men who are the same age as me, dancing like nobody's watching, right? You know what men are often like? You know, they're too cool to dance.
What were they dancing to?
They're like on the edge, not dancing. And then suddenly the DJ, who had absolutely understood the assignment, she had absolutely understood the assignment, this is the 50th birthday party, pulls out the bangers after a while. 1 minute I'm bopping along next to Brent, we're dancing to It's Like That by Run DMC. And the next minute, he breaks into the full caterpillar, just throws himself on the ground in the middle
Brent.
of the floor.
It's not going to be good on your back.
I was worried about his shoulder. I was worried
God.
about his chin. Worried about his scar. And then another one, like Right on Time by Black Box comes on. Another one's in there, giving it all the
so
old
good.
rave moves, all the big fish, little fish, cardboard box. If there was anyone there, and luckily there wasn't, if there was anyone there who was young and cool, they would have been so mortified and we all would have ended up on embarrassing videos on the internet. But they weren't there. It was a safe space to be as daggy as you wanted. And I have not had that much fun in a very long time. So here's to old people dancing. That's all I'm going to say.
That's so good.
My worst was bad. It's a story of my weekend. On Friday, I get up and I had to go to Melbourne for the day. I was doing a quick wee before I left and I hear plonk. Oh, that's my phone in the toilet. And I went, this is not good.
Were you at
Back
home?
pocket.
I was at home.
Now, for a normal person, that would be okay. We've all dropped our phone in the toilet.
Yeah.
Well, I have.
Yeah.
Most people have intact phones and phone
And a
covers.
cover.
But then there's you.
I have basically big holes in my phone that
You've
lead
just
to
got
the battery.
wires.
I just have wires that are like taped together.
Exposed wires.
Yeah. And at first the phone was fine. But then on the way to the airport, it went, I just can't handle this. There's water in all of me.
I'm upset.
I was like, interesting. How do I board? How do I
Oh my
research for, because on the project desk, like I'll often Google something, get my head around something. How do I do that? How do I know if my baby is okay? Like I really like being in
Yeah.
contact throughout the day.
I send you videos all day.
Exactly.
How do you get your
When I've
Uber
got
at the
her.
other end?
How do I get
Oh my God.
transfer? Like my brain could not compute. The next 3 days were the intellectually most difficult 3 days I have ever endured.
It's distressing.
Two-factor authentication can go to fucking hell. Because then I go onto my laptop and I'm like, I might
no.
try and get onto
Oh,
WhatsApp.
no.
We've sent you a message to your phone that doesn't work.
Yes.
Well,
Not
fuck you.
helping me. Yeah.
We are so dependent on our phones.
I was like, I never consented to this being the only way I can survive. I actually had a full breakdown by
Like an
by Saturday.
existential one.
It was so bad. And then I think this made it worse. I went to the bathroom and I held it under the hand dryer.
When I dropped mine
in.
in, the dropping was fine, but then I went, ooh, that's disgusting. So I rinsed it under a
sanitised it.
hot tap
What's wrong with
to
you
get rid
people?
of the germs, and that's what killed it.
Have you never heard of Glen 20?
Anyway, no, my weekend got so much worse. I then get a spare phone from Claire. And I'm like, this is fine. This will work, because I get home on Friday night and then Saturday afternoon I need to leave to Melbourne again. Anyway, I spent a few hours
So
looking
you had a
at it.
particularly complicated weekend as well.
And I couldn't just not have a phone.
So you just didn't stay in Melbourne.
I know. I just had to see Luna. Anyway, so I then do it and then synced, got my phone. And I look and I open up the photos and I go, I've lost every photo I've ever taken of Luna because my iCloud something storage. So I kept getting a notification. I was like, shut up. I'm too busy.
Same.
So I've lost every photo. So then that's when I really lost it. And then that's when I swore at Luca, which I've never done. But I did swear at Luca. Yeah.
What was it? His fault? Probably.
No, it's not his fault.
Not his
Felt
fault.
like it though.
Actually, he asked me if I'd backed up my phone.
I know.
I know it's like not the time, not the time.
Bad move.
And so then I go to Melbourne I had to get a transfer from Melbourne to Sorrento. Anyway, I got in the car and I was sharing a car with Hedley Thomas. That was a highlight. That was good.
That's good.
But then I get to the hotel, I have something to eat, food poisoning all night.
What?
Have to get up. 2 sessions the next day. I have
course, I
never
didn't
felt
know
so
about that.
sick. It was the hardest
What did you eat?
weekend. I had a chicken sandwich
Oh,
and I
no.
knew when I ate it
No,
that it wasn't right.
No.
Anyway, and then I had to go get my phone fixed and it's cost me thousands, more than a car repair would cost. Anyway, that's my worst. It's the worst thing that's ever happened. My best is that I was yesterday in Bondi Junction with Luna and we're in this little play area and she was playing with a new friend that she made. This woman who, baby same age, we started chatting and then she was like, this is weird, but do you do the baby bubble? And I was like, yes, I do the baby bubble, which is a new podcast that Claire and I have just released. 3 episodes are available now. I think episode 1 is Hi, I Don't Know You. Episode 2 is okay, we need to debrief about the first post-birth shower. And episode 3 is boobs bottle. And by the way, you're doing everything wrong. Quick note on sterilising. I don't think I understand. What about sterilising the steriliser? And my steriliser says, make sure you descale regularly. And I don't know what descaling is. Does it ask? Have you checked if it has scales? If not, I think it's descaled. I think it has scales. And I don't understand. And then I feed Matilda and I'm like, are you going to get scales? My baby and my sterilizer is a fish.
The brief for this podcast was nothing helpful, like no advice. No experts, no advice, just 2 sisters going through it, having a debrief.
Yeah, 6 months apart and just like looking at all the funny parts. And she said, I shared it with my mother's group. We loved it. And so having people in that same demo get it.
Comedy podcast about parenting.
It's a comedy podcast about parenting. And Claire and I have had so much fun making it because there's such earnestness around parenting. And the one thing we've thought is just how funny and ridiculous the whole thing is.
It's made me laugh so much. The whole thing that you did about, hey, mama, how will you have a baby? Everyone starts calling you mama.
Oh, my God.
Mama and
hey,
Bub.
mama.
How's Bub?
How's Bub today, mama?
Next one I die. So that is our new podcast. You can go and listen to it. It's called The Baby Bubble. It's for anyone who is in those trenches or just wants to know a little bit what it's like.
My worst of the week involves tuna. And not your dog whole.
Oh.
I also don't cook, but I need to eat some food. And when I said I was a vegetarian, I do still at the moment eat fish. Although I didn't like eating fish when I was in Fiji and we were snorkeling because
Felt too close.
yeah, fish
my
are our friends.
gosh.
I didn't like it. I do eat fish though. So I have this thing that I have that's just like a staple. We can talk about what I eat in a day at some stage, but I can't do meal preparation. I just can't. Like chopping an onion, beyond me. So what I have is, because I'm trying to eat more protein, I have this like big Tupperware container full of canned tuna and 3 bean mix.
Yeah, that's
Right?
good.
Which
I
is
approve.
fun. And sometimes some chickpeas.
Put some greens in it, Dom.
Yeah. I should put some greens in
Throw
it.
some
Anyway,
rocket in.
it's like I have this big, like probably it's a 2 kilo container full of tuna. So I had it out on the kitchen bench because I wanted to take some to work for lunch. And I went off and had a shower. And then I came back on my way out the door. The container was on the floor
Who could it be?
with probably 3/4 of it gone. And my fucking dogs, I swear to God, I know I'm not meant to talk about dogs, but I can't help it. So I just went, oh, fuck. Okay. I just went, I'll deal with this later. I'd put the lid on, put it back in the fridge.
Yeah. Speak to us about that thought process.
There was
Why
none.
did you put it back in the fridge after the dogs had been eating it?
Because I looked at it and this is the thought process that went through my mind. I went, you know what? Sometimes my dog kissed me on the face. And is it that different?
But I just feel like they've licked the tuna. It's probably regurgitated. They probably ate the whole thing and then the stomach was full and just regurgitated 1/4.
No, they didn't, because I can tell you it came out the next night. But so I just put it back in the fridge and I just thought that's a problem to deal with later. And I was going to maybe think about it some more or maybe not or whatever.
Forget about it.
Anyway, in the family group chat later in the day, I was like, oh, this funny thing happened this morning, blah, blah, blah.
Uh-oh.
My husband went, that is disgusting. I can't believe you did that. I just ate that for lunch.
Oh, no, Mia.
He is borderline not talking to me at this time. And I thought it was quite funny. He was like, even when I got home a few hours later, having forgotten about it.
It's funny.
I thought it was funny. He's like, I feel so disgusting. You can get diseases from dogs. What were you thinking? And I was like, look, on reflection, I made a poor choice.
He's a bit germaphobe too.
I said, I did not know you'd be home early from work and I did not know that you'd eat it because usually it's a thing that I eat. And he goes, it doesn't matter. Anyway, things aren't great.
You know, my dog also just jumps up and eats things off the counter. Elvie never did that, but tuna.
Tuna.
Yeah.
She
Tuna like
once
tuna.
ate half of a batch of Brent's award-winning scones.
Anyway.
Oh, wow.
So then, anyway, I won't even tell you what happened after that when it came out. But my best of the week has been traveling with you two. It is so funny. I'd forgotten how much I love it and how much I've missed it. It is like, because when I travel with my family, they're all very strict with me and they're all very, go here, don't lose your passport, go to the gate, you're late, you stop it.
It's always something to do. Oh,
Stop
check
wandering
in.
off.
Oh,
Yeah.
There, you left your bag.
No
Yeah.
fun.
You know, and
We're
it's
not like
really
that.
boring. But with you two, it's just chat. We all get lost together. We all wander off. There's no judgment.
I forgot to tell you both that. So the thing about not having a phone is that you need to get a physical boarding pass. If I didn't have my wallet, I wouldn't have been able to get on the plane. But anyway, I got my physical boarding pass with all my flights. And 4 out of 4 times, I lost the boarding pass
yes.
between being given it
Yes.
and getting
Yes.
to the gate, and they needed to reprint.
I understand you.
I always do that too.
And I never found them again. And I went,
Yes.
no, where did you
Yes.
go? Doesn't make any sense.
So I just look from the Uber to the checkout to in the seats. It just never stops. It's just so fun being back on the road. That's my best.
Apparently, the Gen Zs have a new problem with Carrie Bradshaw, because I will say that we also had a problem with Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. But Jen
Speak for
said
yourself.
they've uncovered a new concern and they won't stop yapping about it. So what we did is we fished for a Gen Z, one caught on the hook, and we brought her into the studio, and that is M. Vernon. And we asked for her thoughts on why she reckons that Carrie Bradshaw is the worst. And Holly got incredibly defensive.
I
She did
did.
not like it. There was a bit of an
Generational
argy-bargy.
divide.
I got upset.
There's some uncomfortable moments. So here is a sneak peek.
I watched it for the first time when I was 19 and I just became obsessed with Carrie.
Oh God, I don't even do that.
To the point where I wanted my entire 20s to just be like her life. And then I watched it a few years ago.
At what age?
At 25. And I hated her. I have such a deep hatred for her.
Do you think that those 4 women, that the friendship that they share on the show is relatable to you?
Yes, if they dropped Carrie.
I
think that's
Carrie!
relatable. I just she just really annoys me.
A link to that will be in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman, with audio production from Leah Porges. And we'll see you out on the road.
We will, in the wild even. Come say hi if you see us wandering around in an airport and usher us to the correct gate, please.
Bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There's a link in the episode description.